The Milwaukee Bucks were a big topic of conversation around All-Star Weekend.
Yeah.
Rightfully so, when you have Giannis Antetokounmpo, Damian Lillard, this core that it should be a title contending team. And as it currently stands, they are sitting third in the Eastern Conference standings, 3-7 over their last 10, all 10 games with Doc Rivers as their head coach. And it's been a sputter. We heard a lot of what JJ Redick said yesterday, and just basically flat out saying Doc Rivers doesn't take accountability for anything. And then you hear all of the clips of what Doc Rivers had said and kind of all of the excuses that he had given as to why they were 3-7 in the first 10 games and how hard the road trip was and how difficult the schedule was and playing at elevation and all those things. But it's also like, hey, you're still one of the most talented rosters in the NBA. You probably shouldn't be making excuses like that.
No. There's a lot of that going on as it pertains to the coaching side, but the personnel side of things, they're still figuring things out. You know, when the Bucks came through here, I got a chance to talk to Dame about kind of what's going on with the team and where they are and what they're kind of working through. And they were still kind of going through roles and understanding who does what, when, where, why. And everybody wants to say, well, you know, it's this, you should be able to just do this. And that's just not reality.
The Miami Heat did not win a title their first year.
And the thing is, I still think the Bucks can figure this out because the talent is so overwhelming and because there is such parity in the league. Anthony Simons hopped on the podcast last night, and he said something very tangential to this. He goes, most playoff teams, they've been together for 3 or 4 years. And he goes, unless something magical clicks, and you almost never see that. But you have to go through 3 or 4 years to truly understand your teammates. All the intricacies and the ins and outs and just kind of feel and reaction. Knowing exactly what you need to do. Like, it's built on years. Not weeks, not months, years. And this team has, 55 games together? And they've had periods where guys have been dinged up, both Dame and Middleton, and trying to figure things out with a new coaching staff, and then the coaching staff, the continuity that you could have had with Terry Stotts goes out the window before season even starts. Then you fire Griffin. Then you bring in Prunty as the interim. Then you bring in Doc. It is just this evolving door of voices and inconsistency. What Giannis has come out and said, Eric Nehm of The Athletic, Eric Nehm's the best beat reporter The Athletic has.
Covers the Bucks.
Absolutely fantastic. Knows the ins and outs of the game and has great relationships with the players, particularly Giannis, because he's been there forever. But there's speaking of the intricacies, Giannis said this about Chris Middleton and then Dame. The other thing is this: you've got to give him space. Talking about Middleton, you got to give him space. Like, he's not Chris. You don't always need to set screens for him in order to get the little space to operate for the floor, for the mid range, for the space or two, or behind the screen there. Chris is kind of different. When it comes to Dame, though, sometimes you've got to give him space. When I come down and you see that I'm on the right side and he's on the left side, I always throw the ball sideways to him because once they're loading and I throw it there, he just operates. That's been helping the team, which is actually kind of a different twist because teams, both Giannis and Dame, here's something for the film nerds. They both like to come down the right side of the floor because what does Dame like to do? Right to left, split between the legs, get to his left hand. It's easier to do that on the right-hand side of the floor. That is your natural spot. Think about where Dame hit his shot over Paul George.
Absolutely.
So you think about the 0.9 against Houston. Even though it happens on the left side of the floor, where does it originate?
Yeah, he
right to
went
left.
Right to left. Went back to the left.
And typically
back into the left.
Right-handed players typically want to get to their left hand to create. And so Dame is learning how to operate more on the left side of the floor because Giannis wants to get downhill from the right-hand side of the floor. That is a subtle but very different change. It is a different side of the floor. So when Dame goes, he has to push to his right to get back to his left to get into that step back that he always goes to. So that's just a very, very simple intricacy that you have to work through, is that sometimes Giannis is going to grab and go and initiate the offense from the other side of the floor.
And that doesn't matter who your coach is.
Yeah.
Like none of that.
Doesn't matter.
Adrian Griffin, Joe Prunty, Doc Rivers, does not matter.
That's between those two guys to figure out when and where that's going to happen. And then flowing into it.
That's why one of my biggest kind of concerns with them is Brook Lopez does not look like he is happy.
He doesn't look like he's fitting offensively. Defensively, he's fine, but defensively,
he looks frustrated. because Beasley and Dame are not good defenders.
Yeah, you can't have them both out there together.
Yeah, and like
Which is why they went and got Pat Beverley.
You can watch their games, and he just is like you see he's demonstrative with his body language, and he just looks fed up.
Yeah,
and like that's a big problem.
No, it is. It is. It's a lack of size at the point of attack, and even though Pat Bev's not bigger, he plays bigger. Look, I don't like Pat Bev, but the effort and intensity is always going to be there. And with Beasley and Dame, Beasley's tiny. Like he's just getting because he's going to end up taking the more difficult of the assignments defensively because Dame has much more of the offensive burden, which people tend to forget that. Like when you have a usage rate that's like 28% or higher, it's very hard to play defense.
Sure is.
It's just it is what it is when you have that kind of creation burden. And even though he has less of one than he did in Portland, it's still very large. So you have a subpar defender in Beasley taking on primary assignments, and now they're hunting that, which means they're in rotation more consistently. So they've kind of had to figure some things out and be a team that kind of goes back to the principles that Mike Budenholzer originally put in, which is kind of hilarious.
But this is where I go to what Shaquille O'Neal said to Damian Lillard on the set of the NBA on TNT during All-Star festivities. This is, I think, something that both Giannis and Dame can both learn from. Mm-hmm. And usually you don't hear this on TV in front of the national audience. It's not like I find it funny that Shaq couldn't find like 30 seconds to pull Dame aside, but we all get to hear it, and I appreciate that we do.
For someone who's not accountable, he seems to always
that's
be
not. That's we recorded right over that Shaq spot. That seems to be Austin Rivers responding to JJ Redick. Guys. But what Shaq said was this team, Dame and Giannis,
mm-hmm.
they can't play nice guy anymore.
No, they have to establish the pecking order. And that was something that I had heard coming out was that Doc was helping with that. That Griffin, because he was hired by basically Giannis gave the green light, that there was a hesitance or a reticence to put down his foot. And not only as a first-year coach, he couldn't. Where Doc, it doesn't matter what you think about him, whether you side with JJ Redick or you side with another player, whatever. Doc does have respect. He does have a ring. And that does carry real weight in that locker room. And so you get hey, this is what you're going to do if you want to win. If you don't want to win, I'm going to go out there in the public and I'm going to throw you under the bus because I've told you what you need to do to win. I've been there. And regardless of the playoff failures, blah, 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 he does get the whole pecking order thing. And he's able to communicate that. And from what I understand, that has been pushed down to them. So and let's see what comes out of it.
This is going to be the interesting part because the pecking order was Giannis was 1.
Mm-hmm.
Then it would be Middleton and Drew. Now Middleton's been pushed down
to 3.
And no longer 2 anymore. That is going to take, and we're seeing that especially with him being out earlier in the year. Mm-hmm. That adjustment did not go as smoothly as we would think, or the Milwaukee Bucks had hoped it would go. But now you're sitting there, all right, is this something that both those guys are going to buy into? Where if you're at the top of that pecking order, you got to be the ones that, as Shaq put it, you can't be nice. Yeah, like the nice has got to stop because they've got some real issues that they've got to work through, both on the floor, like you started this conversation with, mm-hmm. and then off the floor in the locker room and in the practice and facility where they need to figure those things out. And those are 2 completely different issues, but are leading to this team seemingly underachieving, yet still being in the 3rd spot in the East and probably going to be the 1 seed if they make the charge that we think they can.
That's the thing is Giannis addressed it publicly here with Nem. Nem closed the article with this quote from Giannis. I'm his biggest fan. Giannis talking about Dame. Good or bad, I ride with Dame until the bleeping end. I ride with Dame. Like I've been saying this over and over again. This is his team. Down the stretch, he's going to get the ball. There's nothing else that we will do. I don't know how else to put it. I don't know what else to say. But at the end of the day, he has to believe it too.
And this is where Milwaukee has got they're going to have some come to Jesus moments here. Is because coming out of the All-Star break, they have the 3rd toughest remaining schedule mm-hmm. of any team in the NBA.
They're going to get tested.
They have got only behind Phoenix and San Antonio. So if you think San Antonio is bad now, Just wait till this back half of the season. But they've got 2 with Boston, 2 with OKC, 2 with the Clippers, who are playing some of the best ball in the NBA. Those are still remaining down their schedule. They have to work through this, and they got to get it going really quickly, because they have got Minnesota or on Friday, I think is when they come out of the break, and then they have Philly, and then you have about 3 games where you'll be able to work through some stuff with a back-to-back with Charlotte and then Chicago. Then they have the real nuts and bolts of this schedule gets very difficult very quickly, where it is Clippers, Golden State, Lakers, Clippers, Kings, Sixers, Suns, Celtics. That is a gauntlet. So if Doc Rivers is complaining about a tough road trip that they had, they've got a tough stretch of about 7 games coming out of right after this All-Star break starts up, where they're going to be tested and they got to figure it out in short order.
It's going to be interesting. It's kind of funny. All of the NBA shows are leading with this today.
What I find very interesting is that, and we know that this was going to happen, something that was unquestioned here in Portland is now being questioned. Does Dame make people better? And I think that is absolutely ridiculous. Watch what the Portland Trailblazers did when he was off the floor compared to when they were on the floor. Watch how guys in the criticisms when Dame got shut down the last 2 years at the end of the year, they were saying, I can't get open. I can't operate like this.
Mm-hmm.
He made everybody, the gravity around Damian Lillard offensively made everybody around him better.
And you can argue whether or not you believe Dame makes things better for you. I will tell you the math behind it. He has one of the largest gravities quantifiable, because for those that don't know, the tracking software can actually track gravity based by how defenses adjust via the tracking software, how defenses adjust to a player's movement. Dame has one of the biggest gravities in the entire.
Do they win the title this year?
If they stay healthy, they have a legitimate chance, I believe. It would buck the trend. Get it? Buck the trend.
Hey-o.
It would buck the trend of first year kind of quote unquote super teams getting it done. But I do believe that Dame Giannis is the best 1-2 combo in the NBA. And come playoff time, when basketball changes, they haven't figured it out yet. They are the 3rd best pick and roll pairing in the league, and they haven't figured it out yet.
All right.